Hi guys! In this video, we're going to create a simple lead sound from scratch and use that to add a melody to our track. We'll be using 3x-osc to create our sounds. Let's add 3x-osc to our project using the Add menu as we did with Citrus. Let's name this instrument in the channel rack so we know what it is. Right-click the instrument and select Rename Color and Icon from the menu. I'm going to change the name to Lead. You can change the color too if you like, either by mashing F2 or clicking on this area here and choosing a color. Hit Enter to confirm your settings. Hit Ctrl L to route the instrument to the next empty track in the mixer. Click on the instrument to open up its window. 3x-osc consists of 3 oscillators, hence the name. An oscillator in a synth plays a simple waveform, the simplest being the sine wave, which is selected by default. The 3 oscillators are all set to play sine waves at different pitches, which are determined by the coarse tuning here. If I set them all to the same value by alt-clicking the knobs, all we will hear is a single sine wave as all oscillators are playing the same thing. I'm going to hit a note on my MIDI keyboard to trigger the sound so you can hear it. As you can hear, a sine wave is not very exciting. Saw waves are richer and much more interesting sounding waveforms, so let's change all the oscillators to use saw waves instead. To thicken up the sound, I'm going to set the coarse tuning of both oscillators 2 and 3 to be an octave below oscillator 1. If you don't know what an octave is, don't worry. All we need to know right now is that there are a total of 12 notes available to us. These are the black and white keys on a piano keyboard. So every 12 notes, we go up or down an octave. Setting the coarse tuning to 12 will be 1 octave below the first oscillator, whose tuning is set to 24. Next, I'm going to very slightly detune these 2 oscillators. You do this using the Fine Tune knob. If you watch the message area at the top left of the screen, you can see the value as you are adjusting the knob. For this sound, a detune value of between 5 and 10 cents should be just fine. Let's set the second oscillator to be tuned slightly lower by setting it to a negative value. Simply click on the knob and hold down the mouse button while moving the mouse down to decrease the value. You can also hover over the knob and use the mouse wheel, but this is less precise. We will detune the third oscillator the same way, except that this time we are going to tune it higher. Click and drag upwards to increase the value of this knob until it is the same as the previous value, but positive. Detuning oscillators in this way creates a lusher, thicker sound, and is a commonly used trick to make sounds bigger. Another way to make a sound bigger is to make it wider by spreading it across the stereo field. We can do this using the panning knob for each oscillator. Pan oscillator 2 to the left and oscillator 3 to the right by the same amount. The more you pan, the wider the sound will be. I'm going to go with somewhere between 10 and 15%, but feel free to use a different value. The final thing you will want to do is bring up the volume of the third oscillator. The easiest way to do this is to just alt-click its volume knob, which will set any knob or slider to its default value. If we now listen to the sound, it's already a lot more powerful and interesting than the sine wave. But it's still a bit bland. Let's change that. Click on the little graph icon in the header to switch to the envelope settings. We're going to add a volume envelope to the sound, which will change the volume of the sound over time while it plays. This will result in a more dynamic sound. Make sure that you are in the Volume tab and enable the volume envelope using this little button. You can edit the envelope using the knobs at the bottom or by clicking on one of the circles in the envelope graph and dragging it with the mouse. My preference is to use the knobs, but try both methods to see which you prefer. Either way, the graph gives you a good idea of what will be happening to the volume as time goes by. It will start from 0, increase, then drop a bit, and finally fade out at the end. We don't care about the delay, so leave that at 0 for now. Attack is how quickly the sound reaches full volume. A longer attack will have the sound slowly fade in. An attack of 0 means that the sound will immediately start at full volume. For our melody part, we want a pretty short attack, so it has an almost immediate impact. Hold is how long the sound plays at full volume. We also want this to be pretty short. Decay determines the amount of time it takes for the volume to drop from full volume to the sustain volume. I'm going to set my knob to about 9 o'clock for this patch. Sustain is the volume of the sound once we have been through the other stages of the envelope and lasts until the note ends. I want this sound to have a loud initial phase and then get pretty quiet, so I've set the sustain to a low value. If you set it to 0, the sound will stop playing completely after the decay phase. Release is how long it takes for the sound to fade out from the sustain level once the note ends. The default value will do fine for now, which gives us a short fade rather than an abrupt cut. Another important tool that you can use to shape your sounds are filters. Probably the most common type is a low-pass filter, which is selected by default. A low-pass filter will allow low frequencies to pass through the filter while removing high frequencies from the sound. In 3xOSC, you can set the cutoff using the cunningly named Mod X knob. The lower the cutoff, the more the high frequencies are removed from the sound. I'm going to play a few notes on my keyboard while adjusting Mod X so you can hear the effect it has. As you can hear, the lower the cutoff is, the more muffled the sound becomes. The Mod Y knob controls the filter's resonance. This will make the cutoff frequency more pronounced. If I turn it up, you can really hear where the cutoff frequency is as I move the Mod X knob. I'm going to set the cutoff relatively high and the resonance relatively low. This will be enough to shape the character of the sound without changing it completely. Now that we've got our sound set up, let's add a melody. Hit F4 to add a pattern. I'm going to call mine melody, assign a color, and hit enter. Let's add the new pattern to the playlist on track 3. F5 opens the playlist if you've closed it. In the step sequencer, remember that's F6, make sure that the lead is selected and hit F7. I'm again going to play back the track while editing the melody, as that makes it easier to hear what is going on. Remember that you can use spacebar to stop the playback and hit it again to start from the beginning. You don't have to wait for the entire track to loop. You can also click in the header in the piano roll to begin playback from that position. For my melody, I've used the same rhythmic pattern repeated twice and had each repetition follow the same overall shape in the melody. Having a structure tends to make melodies easier to follow. I suggest you try and add a little variation of your own. Remember, we are only using the white keys in this track, so bear that in mind. Once you're done, save your track with Ctrl-N and then take a listen to what you've created. In the next video, we're going to look at creating an intro. I'll see you there once you've finished playing around with your melody.